Hey guys, welcome yet to another of my pool plan video. In this video, I'll be covering my thoughts and plans for the upcoming banners and events where Weiss and Reno will be featured as the synergy character. You can also refer to the banners on the left hand side of the slide to see which events these are. Besides Weiss and Reno, we also have Rem and Vincent making a return as the secondary featured character. First things first, quick look into how I did on the last few banners, and recently we had Setzer, Cloud and Auron being released. For Setzer, I guess I can count myself relatively lucky. I did spend 5000 gems just to get to the 100G tokens. Didn't get anything at all, so I went in with tickets, and it took me 270 tickets to get Setzer FR. I did not get Setzer BT and I just stopped my pool there. I skipped Kayn because I already have Kayn fully built, and as for Cloud's banner, I really wanted to pull for Cloud, but unfortunately Cloud isn't eligible for the ticket mission on the Setzer event, the final Transcendence stage. So because of this, I decided to pull Setzer instead of Cloud, just to have a much easier time fulfilling the ticket mission on that stage. Finally, we have Auron, who recently released. I went in with tickets for Auron as well, and in 130 tickets I managed to snag his FR. Again, unfortunately no BT, but I decided to just skip his BT altogether. So overall, I think I did not too bad, 400 tickets and 5000 gems spent. I am pretty close to the 50 BT tokens cap, but I'm also waiting to see how I do on Weiss and Reno event. I might just token for Reno's BT and just keep his banner altogether, but if I get lucky and I get like a free BT or anything, then I may come back and use the BT tokens on either Setzer or Auron. Okay, so coming to Act 4, Chapter 4, Part 1. This is going to be the debut of Weiss in the GL version of the game. We also have Rem making a return on the second banner on this event. Weiss is a new character from FF7, Dirge of Cerberus, which was one of the spin-off games for the FF7 series, and he represents a very strong DPS with also often somewhat similar to Core in how his often works, but I'll cover more into that. Just quickly going through his kit, and of course I always recommend to also refer to the character infographics from the Thornberry troop, where they go very in-depth and detailed on what the characters can do. Weiss S1 is a single target attack that has 6 HP dumps in total, and it grants him one of his signature framed buffs called Leader of the Deep Ground. That buff just has stats tied to it. His S2 is similar, however his S2 is an AoE instead of a single target attack, but likewise it also grants the same Leader of the Deep Ground buff. Weiss EX is an AoE attack with 5 HP dumps, and it grants himself a second framed buff called Bullets of Destruction. This buff is very important. Not only does it have also offensive stats tied to it, but with this buff up, Weiss also triggers an often attack that will trigger at the start of ally's turn. In this way, I guess it's similar to Core as I mentioned earlier, but this attack also triggers at the end of Weiss's turn, and his often attack is 3 HP dumps, which is pretty sizable in the current meta. Weiss LD is a single target attack that is 7 dumps but has a little bit of splash at the final HP dump. It grants himself yet another framed buff called Pure White Emperor, which only has stats tied to it, so it doesn't change his function or his kit otherwise. Upon use of his LD, he gets a free ability use on his next turn. Moving on to the BT, the BT gives Weiss Sexton's BT Aura upon use, and it is pretty interesting because it does have a few unique elements to it. The first of which is that it gives the entire player party 100% debuff evasion, and this works to prevent even debuffs that are considered guaranteed hit, and so far his gimmick here is the only way in the game to prevent guaranteed hit debuffs. Even if you have characters that give you debuff evasion such as Ares, those will not work against guaranteed hit debuffs normally. Beyond that, you get the usual party stats such as brave damage and brave damage cap plus 50%, HP damage plus 20%, and HP damage cap plus 30%. Finally, in terms of his other unique part about his BT is that it gives an additional 10% more HP damage if you are able to cap out your HP damage on attack. Now this might sound similar to true damage effects such as from Leo, but Weiss's bonus 10% damage here is different. It is a hard 10% increase to whatever damage that you did. And I haven't tested this, but from the videos I've seen, it looks like this also will get multiplied by force gauge bonus as well. So it is pretty sizable, and if you want to pull for Weiss, I would highly recommend to get his PT weapon as well. The two unique stuff that it provides, although I guess it is a little bit niche, but it can come in handy. And with DPS characters, you generally also want to have their BT plus up for the auras anyway. Weiss also gets an FR on this event, and his FR is very melee oriented. It is when you do a melee attack, and this includes often, you get plus 5%. If Weiss is the one that does the melee attack, you get an additional plus 15% for a total of 20%. And this can be quite sizable, not forgetting that Weiss will do a preemptive strike on all your allies' turn, which means that when your other party members start their turn, you already guaranteed a 20% force gauge bonus increase from Weiss. Finally, if you break or attack a broken target on your turn, you get plus 40%. Overall, it's a great FR as the main FR because the only one conditional that you need to pay attention to is the third, and the third is pretty much a given unless the boss is immune to breaks. Weiss being in the party and having all his buffs up will guarantee that you meet the first two conditional, and I suppose you should build a melee party around Weiss, but it isn't too important. Even non-melee characters will work because the other party members doing melee damage only contributes the 5%. The more bigger percentage would of course be attacking a broken target. This also means that Weiss pairs very nicely with other melee characters with often damage. Auron is recently released and he is a good choice, as is Dorgan as well. And finally, you have the time and tested core, who would also I think work really well with Weiss. My plan here is to pull for Weiss, but I'll cover more into my thoughts about how he fares in the current meta at the final part of this video. I'll likely use gems unless I get lucky on the pull, in which case I might change to tickets in that case. Moving on to the next event, which is Act 4 Chapter 4 Part 2, and here we have a return of Reno as well as Vincent. Both Reno and Vincent will be getting a rework. Reno himself will get a new BT weapon because Reno's FR has been previously released. For Vincent, it is the flip side. Vincent already has his BT released before, so on this event, Vincent gets a new FR weapon. Starting off with Reno, Reno's entire kit gets a damage rework, which is really very nice. His S1, S2, EXLD and FR all have their damage bumped up upon use. Reno's BT weapon is very interesting, and in my opinion, if you really want to use Reno, you should get his BT weapon, otherwise he's really not worth it. First off, his BT weapon will inflict his trademark pyramid debuff on all enemies, and it provides the usual party auras, which is actually the same as Weiss. It's brave damage, cap up plus 50%, HP damage plus 20%, and HP cap plus 30%. The reason why Reno's BT is really mandatory and central to his kit is the special effects that it has. When Reno's BT aura is up, Reno's HP attack will change into a new ability called Turk's Combo. Not only is the Turk's Combo attack extremely hard hitting, it is 11 full AoE HP dumps. It also inflicts Pyramid on all enemies and will fill his EX meter by 20%. But the main highlight of that attack is the fact that it's an attack that will delay himself by 1 turn and the rest of your party by 2 turns upon use. Now that might sound counterintuitive. Why would you want to delay yourself? Well, that's because Reno's FR makes him into a very potent, often strategy support type character. Reno's FR makes him a great character to bring for often damage comps. And you can also refer to the infographic on the bottom right to see what his FR does. But essentially his FR gives you a sizable force gauge bonus whenever enemies take a turn and do physical attacks. Although Reno himself doesn't have an often attack, you can of course build a party around him and include characters who can counter and protect each other. Auron is another good choice, and I mentioned him because he was recently released, but you could also bring other characters such as Beatrix or Core or Gladiolus. All of them works really well with Reno, and in an often comp when you enter into force time, you'd obviously want to take as few turns as possible so that you can somewhat stretch your force time as long as possible, since they only go down in duration on your turn. So in an often comp, you typically want the bosses to get many turns so that they will attack you and you will counter attack them with force bonus boosted attacks. And of course, you ideally want a main FR that will increase in percentage even if enemies take their turn, which is where Reno's FR comes in. So Reno's PT helps this strategy a lot because his Turk's combo attack will delay himself and the rest of the party, thereby reducing the number of turns that you take, and by extension making you have a much longer force time. Just quickly about Vincent, because Vincent also does get a rework here. His S1, S2, EX and LD all gets a rework, and his BT now also gives the entire party a bonus party HP damage cap plus 30%, and notably Vincent gets an additional plus 50% on top, which is he gets a whopping plus 80% on his turn. This is very similar to characters such as Squall and Cloud. Vincent's FR is pretty okay. Upon use, it inflicts his debuffs, which is his Eye Brave and Attack Down, and his Fire Imperil and Thunder Imperil debuffs. His force conditionals are, if you attack a debuff target on your turn, you get plus 5% per debuff, so it caps out at plus 40% if the enemies have 8 debuff. And if you attack an elemental weakness, you get plus 35%. So this means that if you meet both conditionals, you could potentially get plus 75%. Finally, during Vincent's force time, if you attack a debuff target, which is almost always a given since Vincent is a debuffer, you get HP damage bonus and cap up plus 50%, which means that Vincent can go up to 130% HP damage cap up by himself in his FRBT time. My plans here is mainly to go for Reno. I already have Reno's FR, so I really want to get his PT weapon as well. I am pretty close to the PT token cap, so I may just PT token Reno's PT and skip the banners altogether. I don't plan to pull for Vincent, have no interest in the character. Alright, welcome to the section where I cover my thoughts on the characters that I released and who I would generally recommend if you are limited in resources. Take note that this is just an opinion, and as you can see at the bottom of the slide, the best recommendation is to always focus on roles that fill gaps in your roster, because having a varied roster is the best way to approach this game. There are only 2 categories that I generally use. The first is the good value category, which are characters that I think would provide you good value regardless of who you already have in your roster, and this is just by virtue of how good I think they are. The second is the role fulfillment category, and these are the characters that I think are still good, but you may be able to do without, especially if you already have characters who can do similar roles in your roster. I'll start off with the role fulfillment category, and here I placed the 2 secondary featured characters. You can see I placed Rem on the far left and Vincent on the far right. Rem is still one of the best supports in the game, and I really cannot understate how good it is that she has turn manipulation in her kit, especially tied to her force echoes as well. She's also got a nifty BT aura to boot, and she can somewhat force gauge charge as well from her cure ability. All in all, a very strong support. The only thing stopping her, I guess, is that we also have many other strong supports at this point. But if you are fairly new to the game and you don't have a lot of support characters, she is a very good character to go for. On the other hand, we have Vincent, which unfortunately I think he didn't receive enough love in the rework. Overall, his damage is pretty okay. It likely will not be able to compete with the top tier damage dealers such as Estos or Weiss, who's released here, or Auron, but notwithstanding those characters, his DPS is actually pretty good otherwise. His BT aura does also prevent the bosses from buffing themselves, and that is a pretty rare utility to this day, so it is something to consider as well. The main drawback, I guess, is many of Vincent's debuffs are not framed, so depending on the fight and your party, it may be hard to get them to stick consistently. Beyond that, his newly released FR, one of the conditionals also requires you to do elemental weakness damage, but notably Vincent is only an Imperialer, he does not enchant your party, so if you want to make use of his Fire and Thunder Imperil, you will need to bring another enchanter in your party. Overall, I just don't think there's enough of an incentive to pull for Vincent. I mean, we also have Weiss that's also released here, so if you really want a strong DPS character, my question is, why not just go for Weiss in that case? Which brings me to the good value category. Here I have Reno and Weiss, and their position on the slide here is not indicative of how I would rank them because their roles are really very different. Like I mentioned earlier on the video, Reno is more of an often comp strategy support unit where he provides a great FR to be used as main, and he can also delay your entire party while having a very strong attack during his turn in the Turk's combo ability. Weiss, on the other hand, does pretty good damage overall, and he brings with him a very strong 3 HP dump after an attack that triggers at the start of ally's turn and at the end of his turn, plus the additional ability to also give you guaranteed debuff immunity, plus also having a BT aura that further supports the maximum damage output for the rest of your party as well. To be honest, I'm really more excited for Reno because Reno's BT ability to delay the entire party can be somewhat very powerful if you build properly around him. Nothing to take away from Weiss, like I say, he is pretty strong, but it's just that I am quite comfortable with my DPS roster anyway. I have characters such as Auron or Estos. I am still going to be pulling for Weiss, but overall, in terms of how excited I am about the new characters, I would have to give the cake to Reno. I think Reno deserves special mention, especially if you pulled for Auron recently. He was just released before this, and Reno goes extremely well with Auron. And I'm fairly sure both of them together can auto plus a great deal of the earlier stages. And one other notable thing, of course, is the Dimensions End reprise stage that we now have. So if you are fairly new, the combination of Reno and Auron plus any other third support / force echo character that is boosted would likely allow you to take on the stage very easily. So that's it for this video. In summary, I will likely be pulling for Weiss. I will more likely be BT tokening Reno so that way I can skip the banner and save my resources. I already have Rem and I'm not very interested in Vincent, so I will be skipping both of those banners. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope this video has been helpful, and as always, if you enjoy the content, do leave a like, comment or subscribe. It really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next pool plan video. Bye!